Welcome back to Nobody's Madness. And hopefully we have some improvements. The lighting should be a little better, and I got a microphone because I had some complaints about sound, so hopefully it'll be much better this time around. So, last episode we were talking about Psi Ritual, and now I want to start going into the components of Psi Ritual. Number one, we'll start off with something that's been covered in a lot of different other areas. Many people have talked about it, written about it, so it's nothing new, but maybe I can shed a little extra light on the subject. And that's going to start off, I keep debating on if I should do environment plus clothing. They generally run the same gamut. No jumping. So, if I can work around the animals. So, the first thing that somebody who's deciding to start performing Psi ritual should do is pick a location. It could be a temple, a solitary room, a place in nature that they like, but they should definitely pick one spot and practice in that spot over and over. Devoting a little space, it doesn't even have to be a room, it could be a corner, it could be whatever you have available. I frequently use this very spot just because it's comfortable and convenient, and for less mobile work, much better for meditation as opposed to, full-on rituals. But all rituals can be done mentally. So the point is you choose a spot, and this is a twofold thing. Number one, it's ideal to pick a spot that you feel harmonious with, a spot that makes you feel like you're about to perform a ritual. Maybe one day I'll show you guys my favorite spot. That's probably not going to happen now that it's wintertime, but the idea is to pick a place that makes you think of Psi practice, spiritual, otherworldly, outside of your normal everyday life. So basically one that's spiritually or Psi empowering. And again, that's ideal. Not everybody can do that, and everybody can find a spot like that to start off with. So just pick a spot where you can be comfortable, a spot that's a little quieter than usual, and then practice as much as you can in that spot. It's not to say that you can't practice anywhere else. This isn't some rigid rule that this is the only place. It's just you pick a spot, and one, if the area is Psi empowering, then you have that advantage. If you go to a spot and you just feel at one with the world or at one with your surroundings, or very calm and peaceful, someplace that just relaxes you, this is an ideal spot because a lot of the groundwork will already have been laid. You will get to that spot and it'll make you serene. But if that spot is not available, then the work itself will change the nature of that spot. Now, we can say that it's psychological, we can argue that it's purely psychological, but it's both. We're using psychology to aid us in our Psi work, and as we proceed, we'll see that a lot of Psi overlaps with psychology, just like these things overlap with science. Sorry, cat distraction. The idea is to have the spot psychologically prepare you, mentally prepare you for the work that you're going to do. And as you proceed, that association is going to get stronger and stronger. And if we look at it the way that I prefer looking at things, which is looking at it energetically, I believe I've mentioned this before, you're actually going to be infusing that area with your energy. Every time we do anything, we think, we breathe, we eat, we speak, we vibrate, everything that we do is influencing the world around us. And so all of that energy has to go somewhere. It's absorbed just like the light is being absorbed by my coat or by my robe. So it's having an effect on it, and we don't fully understand how everything gets ingrained by that energy. It becomes charged with intention. And I think it sounds fantastical. It sounds like, oh, that's a load of crap, or scientifically that's not true, blah blah blah. There's a lot of skepticism to go along with that. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of reason to think that it's crazy. That's why it's my madness. But if you examine your life, if you look back, most people can think of a time when they've walked into a room or they've gone to some place and you know, just had a feeling that either the room was filled with anger or it just made you uncomfortable. And sometimes this is alone, set aside from any, artwork on the wall that may, disturb you, or, you just go into an area and something about it just doesn't feel right. Um, that is an argument towards the fact that, not knowing anything about that location, you walk in and you're like, wow, something's wrong with this place. That the room itself has energy. Uh, you can walk into a room where two people have just got done fighting and that energy is still in the room even before you see anybody, so there's not always these psychological body language indicators and speech, language, pheromones. Sometimes you can notice it without any of these things being present. Some people are more sensitive than others. So I've had people walk into a room behind me and I can feel the anger coming off of them, but that's just me. Not everybody has experienced this, but most people have something that's similar along those lines. It's kind of like walking into a library. Before you know what a library is, the environment is different. You walk into a library and it's just calm and quiet. And the atmosphere of it is like putting pressure on you to be quiet. And that's aside from, eventually, of course, as a child, you're going to challenge it, but the initial sensation of walking into those rooms is very strong. And this is the same atmosphere that we're trying to make. I recall one time I went to a state park, and there was a public area, there was a beach area, and there's two lakes. One has a beach, which is where most people go, and the other has a trail that goes around it, and it's less visited because there's no beach there. And the first time we went, we got to that second lake, and it was much calmer, and it was very quiet, and me and somebody else, we both agreed that it felt like it was hushed like a library. Like it was, we were almost whispering when we talked, because we just felt that the energy just was calm and serene, and we didn't want to disturb it. And it was just so pleasant, and just reminded me of that feeling of when you go into a library where you just want to be quiet. So then we went back again on Memorial Day weekend, and the normal beach area was a little more alive with energy, and it was to be expected. There was a lot of people drinking, and a lot of younger people just being, crazy and stupid. And so we were like, okay, well, yeah, we don't like this vibe. We just didn't like the vibe. So we immediately headed for the other lake as quickly as possible. And it was very much disturbed there this time. It felt upset, and we felt as if it wanted us to leave. So we got around to the farther point of it where we were less likely to be disturbed, and we did a little bit of ritual work, sort of the middle pillar, and afterwards we felt welcomed by it. So we could say that it was purely psychological, but there was definitely energy, and whether it's pheromones or body language, and which involves light. Body language doesn't exist without the light reflecting, and that light is energy, and that energy is absorbed by us, and that energy absorbed by us has an effect on all the other energy systems in our body. Mental processing, which changes blood chemistry. It's all energetics. So we feel the energy of something, and then that energy hits us, and then that energy affects us, and then we then exude a different energy, and that energy intermingles with all the rest of the energy. So you have, for instance, one angry person, and their energy hits the other person, and that person takes in that energy, and if they don't know how to deal with it, then they become angry, and then the anger goes back and forth until it escalates and becomes physically violent. That's just an example of it. Now, for me, for instance, understanding these energetics, I will take that energy and absorb it and process it, and ideally send it out as a calming energy, so that it is not compounding with that other angry energy. And it's a form of transmutation. Sometimes, depending on the methodology or what's coming at me, laughter is usually a good release of energy, and that has an effect on the environment. And that over time, environments absorb that energy, just like anything else, and it imprints. Just like we become imprinted, our minds are a little softer, more malleable, so it takes less time to imprint something on us. But the environment over time, it does absorb that energy, and then it radiates it back out. The psychology part of it, in my opinion, is, aside from the energetics, we have a point of deciding, and then we have patterns, and the main purpose, or the main goal of psychology is to alter those patterns actively. Now, this is very similar to psi work, because we are working with those patterns, but psychology in and of itself is just assessing and changing patterns, as well as broken mechanisms too. I can't discount the physical deficiencies that cause certain mental illnesses, but even those to some extent can be managed with patterns and triggers. So I say all that to say that the environment you choose to practice is going to influence you first, and then as you practice there over and over and over, your work is going to influence that environment over time. So it becomes twofold. After the initial point, your work is going to be sending out energy over and over and over. And I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over and over, but once that energy starts to infuse your environment, that environment is going to start reflecting it back at you. So it functions to some extent like a battery. So those days where you just otherwise can't get your mind focused onto the spiritual practice, the idea is that when you get to that spot will reintroduce that to you. And that's part of the psychology of it, because it's creating a pattern, and I don't want to use the term state-dependent learning. I'm blanking on the term that I want to use here, but you're creating a pattern so that when you get back into that spot, it's semi-Pavlovian, that you get to that spot, you're going to practice spirituality, you're going to practice psi. But initially, there is an exchange, and eventually it does get to that point where it is that psychological trigger. But at the same time, you have the energy that you've infused into that area to draw into how you're working. So I guess I'll leave it at that. We'll keep it short. But the first, again, to just recap, you want to pick a spot to practice repeatedly for those benefits and for those reasons. So we'll leave it at that, and I will make the next episode about clothing and why that's an important decision to make. So, okay, thank you for watching.